let's talk about kinetic stretching of hip rotation in the 90-90 base position. This stretching is going to be appropriate for you if you are comfortable in your 90-90 or if you are comfortable in a modification of the 90-90 position. So the modifications are, you can place your front leg and hip on some yoga blocks, or you can place just that front knee on a yoga block. You can also close this position up. Instead of 90-degree angle at the knees, you can bend those knees in for a shin box position. That'll be a less severe position for the rotation of the hips. And so if you're comfortable in any of those modifications or in your 90-90, then this is going to be for you. Here's what we'll need for today. You're going to be pressing either a stick or your hand into a wall so that we can pull this rib cage away from that front leg. If you don't have a wall nearby, you can also use a yoga block if you have one to help push into, to pull that rib cage away from the floor. I like to use kinetic stretching as a movement prep. So this is assuming that we've already got some blood flow to the hips that we're working. The purpose of kinetic stretching is so that we can find activation in the tissues, both going into and out of our end range. So we want to improve this passive range, which is a stretch of the rotation of the hip, but we also are hoping to then eventually turn some of that newfound passive range into active range without the assistance so that you could lift that leg up and maintain some rotation at the hip. We're using body weight to really load this stretch, but at the same time, we're pulling into it and we're pushing out of it. So we are not just collapsing into that passive range like you may have already done. We are actively pulling in and pushing out, activating the tissues in the hip and the leg to then really strengthen and own that passive range of motion. For the trail leg too, we are focusing on loading this rotation with our body weight. That is the assistance that we're going to be using to get into a deeper range of motion. So when we're going into this internal rotation, the main goal is to get this hip towards the floor, but on top of that, it's really to just shift your weight onto this leg. So this front knee is going to be lifting up here, right? So the goals are pull into the stretch actively, push out of the stretch actively, and really load that stretch with the body weight so that we are truly getting into that end range. A really simple way to think about kinetic stretching is that if my torso is a magnet and it's a positive, and my leg is a magnet and it's a negative, then I'm going to actively pull the two magnets towards each other. So as I'm stretching forward into this passive range, I'm also trying to lift this leg up towards my chest. And then all of a sudden, this leg turns into a positive and they both repel against each other. So the leg pushes down into the floor and my chest comes all the way back up. Right, so I'll show you again. Right now they're positive and negative pulling towards each other, and then we're gonna push down. All of a sudden that leg becomes a positive and they repel. So let's break down this movement just a little bit and you can follow along with me as we go. So let's start with the right leg in front. Now you're gonna choose your modification for your 90-90 with the yoga blocks or in your shin box or just straight up in 90-90. And we are gonna press into the floor or a wall to help take some of the stress off the obliques to sit up nice and tall in this position. So we want that right knee right in front of the hip. We want the left knee straight out from the hip, not in front or behind. And we want those knees bent at 90 degrees. Feet are going to remain flexed. So we're gonna do our external rotation first. We're pitching forward over the right leg. So driving that stick into the wall or the floor or your hand into the wall, we're going to pitch forward into external rotation stretch. So you're gonna feel a stretch in the outer part of this right hip, perhaps in the inner part of this right thigh. And as we're doing that, I want you to think about lifting the foot and the shin up towards your left shoulder. So the knee's kind of gonna stay on the floor, the thighs still pushing into the floor, but we want to try to lift the foot and the shin up. Now, if you're having a hard time going forward into this stretch or loading this position so you can get deeper, you can place this on your stick to the side and use your hands on the ground. It's gonna allow some of your body weight to go into your hands if you can reach the floor. And so we'll be able to not only shift further into that stretch, but activate that rotation a little bit more. Then from here, we're going to hold for a few seconds. Make sure that as you're pitching forward, this right hip is pulling back away from the right knee. The tailbone is tipping out towards the ceiling. The spine is remaining nice and long, and you're not caving that rib cage out to the side. So we're just pulling straight forward into this stretch as far as you can go without letting that chest round. Then we're going to push down into the floor with that foot and shin to come all the way back up, right? So if you have your hands on the floor, you can move them around as you're doing this, right? If you have your stick, you're just going to keep driving it into the wall or the side. So now we're going to do that again. Pulling forward into that stretch. Once again, drive the knee down, but try to lift the foot and the shin as that chest goes forward. Tip that tailbone out behind you, pulling as far as you can while keeping that long spine. Then you're going to push that foot and shin into the floor to come back up. Let's do that 2 more times on this side. I'll show you from this angle. As we pull forward, we're lifting and rotating more into that stretch. Trying to activate this rotation. You may feel the inner thighs here working, and then we're going to push down into the floor to come back up. We could do it one more time to progress. You could do it with your hands to the side or behind you or even behind the head. As we pull forward, this is going to require the most control over this range of motion. Keep breathing, and as you exhale, push down to come back up. Okay, so there's your external rotation. We'll do it on the other side again. So keep repeating it and coming back to this, and then eventually you will understand this movement. Let's try the same with the left hip. So we're going to stay in this 90-90. We're going to do our kinetic stretching for internal rotation, which is this trail leg. So the goal of this one is to sit my weight onto the left hip. What that's going to do is it's going to internally rotate this hip more because my torso is turning towards that left leg, right? So the angle of my rotation, because I am turning my body, increases. So like I said, the goal is to sit your weight onto this left hip as much as possible. Now the right knee is going to come up. So allow that to happen, and you can even exaggerate it a little bit so that you can shift more of your weight onto that left hip. Try not to lean too far away here. You want to try to sit up as tall as you possibly can. And your hip might not reach the floor all the way, and that's okay. If we're doing this the right way, we're going to feel a really intense stretch right here in the inner capsule of the hip. So that's, if you're feeling that, it's okay. That's normal, but try not to push it too hard if you're new to this. Now we're sitting onto that left hip, trying to keep this left knee on the floor. You could even put your hand on this knee, either hand. You could put your right hand on this side. As we're doing that, remember, the torso is a positive magnet and the leg is a negative magnet. So I'm trying to, once again, keep the knee down, but lift the foot and the shin to get further into this stretch. Holding here, trying to continue lifting up. You can place your hands on the floor. That should help shift your weight onto the hip and find a little more activation in that rotation. Then from here, I'm going to drive the heel down into the floor. So notice how that engages my glutes, and I'm pushing out of that stretch. So that's that moment where the negative magnet turns into a positive and they repel away from each other. So let's try that again. Slowly pull into that stretch. So the right knee is lifting up, right? You've either got your hands either on the left thigh or knee, and this left hand could even be trying to pull this foot up more, or you've got your hands on the floor behind you. Keep driving that knee into the floor, and then you're going to push down with that foot to come back out of it. Let's try that 2 more times. I'll show you from this angle. I'm sitting that hip down, trying to lift, 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 lift. Breathe, hold that position. Each second you're there, you're going to keep trying to get further into that rotation. So you're going to keep driving the knee down, keep trying to lift that foot, feel that cramping in the outer part of the hip here, and then push down into the floor to come back out of it. And let's do that one more time, pulling into that stretch. Just like the external rotation, you're trying to pull this hip away from that knee slightly as well. Okay, it's not as important as getting that hip to the floor, but we still do want to lengthen that femur, that thigh bone a little bit. Keep driving that knee into the floor. Try to lift that foot and that shin. and push down to come out of it and release. So you'll see how doing this without stretching or moving the hips first can be a little bit difficult because we are trying to go all the way into our passive range or our assisted stretch range of motion. And if our tissues are not quite warmed up enough yet, we won't be able to get all the way there. So now let's switch and do our left side. So now the left leg is in front, right leg is the trail leg. This is my better side. Everyone's got one side that feels a little bit better than the other. This one feels more comfortable for me. So I'm gonna go right away with the most progressed version, which is hands behind the head. So we're gonna do the same thing, 4 on each side. Couple reminders, your body is the positive magnet, the leg is the negative. Once you're in that end range, then the leg turns into a positive and they repel away from each other. Same thing for that internal, they're pulling towards each other and then repelling away. We're trying to get all the way to end range. So you might not be able to produce much force. You might not feel too much activation once you're all the way in that end range, and that's okay. That'll get better the more you practice. So here we go. We've got 90-degree angles, feet are flexed, hands are on the floor, or you've got your stick or you've got your yoga blocks. In my case, I'm doing this with my hands behind the head. Let's pitch forward. So as you pitch forward, the left hip's pulling away from the left knee. You're trying to lift that left foot and shin, activating this stretch, keeping that spine nice and long. Then push into the floor to come up out of that position. And let's do that again. Pulling forward into that stretch. Try not to let the chest turn too much here. We want to try to keep that chest right on top of that left thigh. And then push down to come back up. I'll show you from this angle. We're pitching forward into that rotation. Nice and long in that torso. Once again, loading that stretch by shifting the body weight onto the leg, but still trying to actively lift up into it and then push out of it. And we'll go one last time. Keep that spine nice and long, pulling into that end range. Deep breath here, and then push out of it. Nice. Now let's do that for internal rotation. I'll show you from this angle, okay? Hands can be on the ground behind you. The goal is to sit onto this right hip. Left knee is gonna lift so you can really get that hip all the way to the ground. As you're doing that, the knee is driving down. You're trying to actively lift that foot and shin. You're gonna feel that glute med here. Then we're gonna push down into the floor with that foot to come up out of that rotation. Let's do that again. Pulling into that stretch. You can drive that knee down, try to lift that foot up while still shifting your weight onto that right hip and then push out of it. Let's do that 2 more times. We're pulling into that stretch. Hip is going down. You can put your hand on that hip. You can put your hands behind you, trying to lift that foot and then push down to come back out of it. One slight modification here. If you're feeling a lot of tension in the knee, you can relax the foot and put more of the top of the foot on the floor. Let's go one more time, pulling into that stretch, still trying to lift that foot up, shifting onto that right hip, and then push out of it and release. All right, so that is your 90-90 kinetic stretching. Like I said, this is really great as movement prep once you've already got some blood flowing to the tissues of the hips and we know where that end range stretch is. We're improving the pathway of getting to that end range and from that end range actively, so then we can hopefully turn most of that passive end range into active range of motion. I hope this was clear and helpful. If you have any questions about this movement, drop them in the comments below. Thanks so much, and I will see you next time.